Open fire. Now that I have your attention.
Welcome to the Chiss Ascendancy podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Chiss Ascendancy podcast. This is Josiah, and we're at episode 103, if you can believe that. And I am joined by my good friend, Finn Clay. If you are an Instagrammer, you can find him at FinnDoorMoon on Instagram. He's a great friend, good buddy, Star Wars buddy, and a fantastic, not just toy photographer, but customizer, and makes some super sweet customs. I've actually got a handful of his stuff myself, and does really great work, does really great paint work and stuff like that. A lot of times from afar, you see somebody's working like, oh, that's neat. And then you get an impression like, wasn't as good as I was thinking it would be. But Finn does fantastic. And so he's going to be joining us. So Finn, welcome on, dude. Thank you for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man. I really thought for sure that you're going to say, all right, episode 103, we made it.
I think Samuel's been taking that role from me here recently. He's been saying we made it. And it's purely to spite me. Getting a little sick of it. No, I'm joking. So, first of all, Merry Chissmas. This is coming out Christmas Eve, 2024. That's pretty crazy. So I'm planning on working on this a little bit this evening and then putting that together so we can have it for tomorrow. And for a lot of you who are friends and listeners of the podcast, you're probably off of work. Yours truly will be working on Christmas Eve, in sales. That's just the way of the world. So, but it's all good. Hopefully I get something done quick and my boss has pity on me and lets me go home. So it'll be fun. I'm excited. Lots of stuff to look forward to this holiday. Finn, catch us up on life, buddy. How have you been? What are your favorite recent figure pickups? Not to put too much pressure on you, but any holiday plans, stuff like that. Just let the listeners and fellow creators catch up with you from the last time you were on the show with us.
Well, life has been good, man. I can't really complain about really anything. I mean, my job is great. Things are going great with my wife's work and school and everything. I'm surviving and thriving and everything in between, man. It's been great. This year has treated me well so far. But as far as figures and releases and things like that, dude, I've been absolutely on top of the world with all of the Rebels stuff that's come out this year.
Yeah.
I've got to say, as of right now, until I open my Ghost and my figures, which I'm making myself wait until Christmas Eve to do that.
That's
which
awesome.
is taking every ounce of restraint that I have.
Yeah.
I've got to say that the Rebels
Tina Jarrus.
Oh my gosh, that
Great
has
figure.
got to be probably the best vintage collection figure I've ever owned, and it may be my favorite.
That's awesome.
Just Star Wars figure of all time that I've ever owned. It's just a perfect figure.
And for those who are listeners, but not necessarily in the toy collecting community, you have basically, if you're a Star Wars fan, because you have all kinds of different levels of fans that listen to the show. You got people who just listen because they're friends of mine. You got people who listen because they're found us because of YouTube or Instagram or whatever. Listeners actually in a couple of different countries and stuff, which is really neat. For those of you who aren't toy collectors, the company that's had the Star Wars license for forever has been Hasbro, and they've had their hills, they've had their valleys. Something that they have hit out of the park has been their, specifically with the Heritage Scale, that 3 3/4 inch figure. The thing that they've done really well is their crowdfunding projects. And so a good while ago, they crowdfunded the Ghost, which is the main ship from the animated series Star Wars Rebels. If you have not checked out Rebels, I would recommend highly that you do that. If you, back in the day, you watched Clone Wars and you're like, that's enough Star Wars animation for me, Rebels has a different feel. The animation for me personally, I like the Clone Wars and Bad Batch style of animation better. But as far as the Star Wars stuff, the oomph, the zest, the chef's kiss, you get so much lore and so much just crazy, goofy, nut job Star Wars stuff. So if you're like, you know what, I want to dive headfirst in, Rebels starts off really kiddish, really playful. I remember watching it being like, I don't know if I'm going to like this show. And by the end of it, it is probably like, pound for pound, to use a fighting term, Rebels is probably the most Star Wars you're going to get in a Star Wars show, if I do say so myself. So the main ship from that show was crowdfunded through Hasbro Pulse, and folks are just now starting to get them. I have not gotten a shipping notification yet. I have not gotten a shipping notification. I haven't gotten it in the mail, which is crazy, but I'm on pins and needles. I'm very excited. So yeah, Kanan looks amazing. I did recently pick up Thrawn from the Ahsoka series, which obviously is a necessity. Got on my Thrawn jacket here and my Chiss Takes Over Galaxy's Edge t-shirt, which is of course a favorite of mine. Actually, so for those of you who are listening to the show and don't know what I do for a living, I work for Subaru and I sell cars for Subaru. And it's actually a very, very different style of vehicle sales than your typical car salesman, car lot, whatever. And they're very philanthropic. So it's cool. We get to give back to the community and stuff like that as well. So today I was showing a couple a vehicle. They've got a young child. They're looking to get in something a little bit larger. So we have this used Subaru Ascent on the lot, which is our largest kind of passenger style vehicle. Anyways, he's a big Subaru fan. He loves the car. We go in and we start talking about, do we want to do this tonight? What do numbers look like? Yada, 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 the typical stuff, right? And I have a Boba Fett on a Tython Funko Pop and a Thrawn Funko Pop on my desk. And he goes, "Oh, you like Grand Admiral Thrawn?" And I just turned and I was like, "How much time do you have, Chris?" And so we talked for, not very long, but we talked about the podcast. He was like, "Dude, send me a link." So this is exciting. So Chris, if you're listening to this, we appreciate you tuning in. So yeah, Kanan looks amazing. The Zeb looks amazing. The new Jango Fett was great. I personally, obviously having the new Thrawn is great. I'm still holding out hope, and we'll dive into our main meat for the episode after this, but I'm holding out hope for some type of Thrawn from his days in exile with the long hair. I know that's like such a long shot, but the fact that we're going to get a Jeruus Sabaoth,
makes everything
the sky's
fun.
the limit. The sky's the freaking limit. I never would have thought 10 years ago when real quick story, I was so hooked on Heir to the Empire. I dropped off Macy, my girlfriend, who's now my wife, at her home or apartment or whatever. And I'm driving back to where I was living when we first started dating. And there was this long stretch of straight road where there was hardly anybody there. And I turned my brights on. I do not recommend this, guys. Don't do this if you're listening to the podcast. I turned my brights on and I turned on my interior light to my car. And I was reading Heir to the Empire on my freaking book. And I'm doing like this, looking down at the book, looking up at the road, looking down at the book, looking up at the road. Meanwhile, there's an amazing audiobook by Mark Thompson at my fingertips, but I didn't know that at the time. So anyways, I almost died by reading Heir to the Empire.
Don't
very
drink
big fan.
Read. Or sorry, don't read and drive.
Don't read and drive. Read and drink if you want, but do not read and drink. But guys, we are going to jump in real quick. Finn was super gracious. We have 2/3 of the beard batch on here. We don't have an official show or podcast or anything, but we do have a group chat on Instagram where myself, Finn, and our buddy Joel, who is Radis Force Dad, all three of us have beards of some sort, although I do shave it from time to time just to do silly things with my facial hair. But most of the time we all have some sort of facial hair, and we just have the three of us have a great conversation about all things Star Wars, and we've done a couple of lives and stuff like that. So 2/3 of us here. Joel, we miss you. We wish you could be here. I know you're here in spirit. He messaged us and he was like, "My wife invited another family over," which Joel's the nicest freaking guy, but you could just tell he was like, man, he wanted to be on here too.
But man. What, I got to say, that has to be the most Canadian reason to not be on a podcast, is that my wife invited friends over so that we could do hockey on the pond, and they're bringing their kids, and I'm like,
the sweetest, most family-centric excuse ever.
Yes, it absolutely is.
Fine,
but
Joel.
Man, hockey on the pond.
Yeah.
This could be awesome.
I'm being hospitable to my neighbors and my friends. Can't be there tonight.
Oh, darn.
So,
how dare he?
What we're doing tonight is if you can believe this, Finn, we're halfway through the first season of The Skeleton Crew, which feels like it came out last night. And we're 4 episodes, which means we're halfway through the first season. So we're just going to do a mid-season check-in and just kind of chat it up for the next 20 minutes or so about where we're at, what we expect, surprises, and where we think this thing's going. So we have 4 episodes that we're in, and we're not going to break it down one by one. Oh, you got your jaw already. Yeah. I saw him once in store. I was distracted and I didn't pick him up, but I think if I saw him again, I'd probably give him a go. He looks awesome. Yeah.
Honestly, this is one of my favorite figures of the year as well. So
and just the fact that we have Jude Law. Did you get another one?
I got another one made a custom of him without his jacket.
I love it. So we've got 4 episodes we've been through so far. Episode 1 is titled This Could Be a Real Adventure, which is a great title because it really jumps into the story hardcore of these 4 kids who just find themselves basically almost as if we jumped out of the real world into Star Wars world. That's kind of what they're out of the Truman Show into Pirates of the Caribbean, which is crazy. And number 2, episode 2 is called Way, Way Out Past the Barrier. At this point, they're getting off their home planet. Episode 3, very interesting as an astrogration problem. Say that 5 times fast. And the episode that came out most recently is episode 4, Can't Say I Remember, No Atten. So real quick synopsis. Episode 1, we meet our characters. You have 4 main characters. You've got Fern, who's the captain of the ship, quote unquote. You've got KB, who's her best friend, kind of the basically anti-Lobot. Lobot's stuff goes from here back, hers goes from here forward. And then you have Neil, who is everybody's freaking favorite character ever since Yoda came on screen in The Empire Strikes Back.
Pretty much.
He's like the cutest little Max Rebo Jr. And then you have our main character, dude. I am blanking right here. What is the main character?
Whim.
On a whim.
Pushing the green button on a whim.
Yep, exactly. And so episode 1, they find this thing. They think it's the entrance to a secret Jedi temple. Whim is like, his mind is larger than life. He's thinking out of the box. He wants to get out there and explore the world. Like very, very stereotypical, like, you know,
he's like
I worked in the mines, you're going to work the mines, you know? And he wants,
like the
that's your dream, Dad.
In the clouds.
Yes. Yeah. He's basically, you know, those commercials that Progressive is doing right now where the kid's a star football player and he's like, you're giving up on your dream. He's like, no, Dad, I'm giving up on your dream. Yeah. And that's Whim. Whim somehow knows that there's other things out there. And what's cool is me and you love Star Wars content, books, comics, all that kind of stuff. And he's basically a Star Wars nerd within Star Wars. Like he's got his little holopad and he's reading all these stories of the Jedi of old.
He's got his action figures.
Yeah, he wants to get out there. He's very much like a younger version of what Luke Skywalker was, you know, doing what he has to do with the droids, but he's dreamed about taking his starship out in the galaxy. And so finally that happens and they somehow get on this ship and they find themselves out there in the middle of nowhere space. Episode 2, way, way out past the barrier. They're past this place. They're home, basically stuck in time, and they don't realize it. Their home is basically like the lost city of Atlantis or the Fountain of Youth, to quote other stories kind of from our world, where it would be like if someone showed up and said, yeah, I'm from Mars. And you're like, how'd you get here from Mars? I mean, even different than that, because that's a place we can, you know,
Atlantis.
See. It's like Atlantis. Like that doesn't exist. Or El Dorado.
Or El Dorado, because it's all about treasure.
Exactly.
The golden city of El Dorado.
Which, great cartoon.
Oh,
freaking
gosh. Road to El Dorado?
Dude, what were, I don't know what kind of like zen these people were going into, but like freaking Elton John and Phil Collins for El Dorado and Tarzan. Dude. They don't make them like they used to, dude. They don't make movies like they used to. But then they run into Jod. They get off of this crazy, basically almost like a pirates get together area hideout thing. And everywhere they go, they're like, hey, we left home by accident. How can we get back? And everybody's saying, well, where are you from? Maybe we can help you. And they keep saying, we're from Atten. And everybody's like, yeah, sure. Where are you from? You know, like if I showed up on your doorstep and you're like, hey, dude, I'm lost. I'm from El Dorado. And you're like, oh, like El Dorado, like Texas down the street. And you're like, no, like El Dorado where the city of gold is. And you're like, okay, this guy's just being a jackwagon. Right. So then finally, episode 3, they run into a few different characters trying to figure out a way home. And then episode 4, they get coordinates. They follow those coordinates. And they're actually on a planet called Akron, which turns out to be one of a handful of planets seemingly in the same system.
Yeah.
And
it's like the jewels of the old Republic.
Yeah. So catch me up with your thoughts. What are your thoughts so far? You know, just from the hip, you know, 2-minute review of the show so far. And what do you think of it so far? How does it feel so far compared to other stuff we've seen recently? And where do you think this thing's going?
Yeah, honestly, I do think that it feels a lot different from anything that we've gotten so far. I don't think in a bad way. I actually think it's pretty refreshing. I like that we're leaning a lot into the whole pirate motif.
Yeah.
That this is an old pirate ship. You go to a pirate port, pick up some old pirate captain. There's mutiny. There's backstabbing. There's secret treasure. There's like hidden coordinates or hidden map. I mean, it's all so fantastical and adventurous. I think it does a really good job of kind of showing, Star Wars, like it's capturing that same kind of just adventure that we all felt the first time we watched Star Wars.
Yeah.
Except we're getting to see it again through the perspective of these 4 kids. They're
really
getting
cool
to go on that adventure for the first time.
The way that the show does such a good job of, you feel the story through what the kids are experiencing, and because you're feeling that as a viewer, it takes you back in time to that moment where your imagination, your figures, or your video games, or your characters reading your books or comics were really coming to life, and the sky was the limit. And I think it really does get out of the box of what we've had recently. By the season 3 of The Mandalorian, a lot of stuff has almost become like predictable. Like, okay, here's what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like, at some point, every story ever has archetypes that it follows. All Star Wars in general, even though it was lightning in a bottle when it came out in 1977, follows the hero's journey. I mean, George Lucas has been very open with that. And so I agree. Changing pace and going with a different style and just diving into this old motif of like, there's treasure out there somewhere and there's pirates and all this kind of stuff. And they've leaned so heavily into, I guess the word I would call is like, there's a sense of wonder around the story that they're writing right now.
Yes.
And you feel like you're experiencing what these kids are experiencing for the first time as well. So, one of my favorite parts so far is getting to experience these aliens and these creatures that I fell in love with. Like when you're in the freaking cantina the first time, and you're like, as a kid, you're like rewinding and burning up the VHS player because you're like, I want to see all these aliens. Not the Tonka sisters; they don't count; they suck. But that's just a jab. But like the Ithorians, the Shistavanans, that like they're technically like a bat, but they're a werewolf, or all this. Like, I get them all mixed up at some point, But I'm seeing Captain Brutus come in, and he's like just this killer, like werewolf looking character.
He's like Space Blackbeard. That's what he is.
Yes, exactly.
He's got like pistols all over, like 2 on his hips, 3 across the chest.
Yeah,
probably 1 in his boot.
Yeah,
I mean this dude.
He's probably keystering something.
He is menacing. My gosh.
And then you had, not to harp on it, but at the very opening scene of the first episode, a ship is being boarded, and they're like, "This is it, guys. We found this is the ship we thought we were going to find." And long story short, there's a Gran that comes off the ramp and turns, and one of the people that's protecting their ship shoots the Gran in the eye. And for those of you who don't know what it's the alien species in Star Wars that has 3 eyes, and his far right eye gets shot.
It was the Ishitib that got shot in the eye.
Ishitib, that's right. Not
the Gran already has an eye missing.
That's right. But the Ishitib gets shot in his right eye, and instead of being like, "Oh no," like he's down for the count, he just turns and is like, and shoots that guy.
He's not flinching at all.
Yeah. So 3 episodes in, essentially, we've made it. We've picked up Jod, and now we're on this mission. There's 2 missions going on at once. You've got the kids who just want to get back home, right? And then you've got Jod, who wants to get them back home because their home is at Aten, a.k.a. Atlantis, a.k.a. El Dorado, all that stuff. And kind of fast forwarding to episode 4, you get this new wealth of knowledge. What are your thoughts right now on those jewels of the Old Republic, and like, where in time do you think that they are in the timeline? Because time pauses, not in a literal sense, but their society is stuck in time. Where on our Star Wars timeline does it seem to you like we're at when we're living on At-Aten?
Yeah, so I think At-Aten has probably been cut off from the rest of the galaxy for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Because I mean, if we're dating back to the Old Republic, they're still using Old Republic dataries. like currency
Right.
and everything, like it's for lunch money. I mean, it's stuff that would be absolute rarity, like invaluable out in the galaxy, but they're just like, oh, this is just our regular money. And so I think that they've probably been cut off from society and hidden from the rest of the galaxy for thousands of years, maybe even predating the most current republic that fell to the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And so who knows? Maybe they've been there since the time of like Darth Revan or Darth
Yeah, who
Malgus,
knows?
like the old Sith Wars and things like that. But like the fact that there were 9 planets that were known as the Jewels of the Old Republic, it
Mm-hmm.
makes me want to know, like, okay, I want to know more. What were on these planets that what were they hiding? Surely it can't just be treasure. Like maybe it's a wealth of knowledge, kind of like a play on Indiana Jones. You know, knowledge was their wealth.
Right.
You know, but I don't know. I like that it brings up the Old Republic because this is the first time in the new canon, really, that Disney Star Wars has actually started taking steps toward addressing the Old Republic, like the Old Republic.
Yeah, because
Because I feel like
the
they've danced
furthest
around that for a long
right,
time because it's so daunting of a task and there's so
right.
much expectation. But the showrunners have been very open about the fact that they said that this show, though it seems very low stakes, very fun, you know, all that good stuff, that there will be a very important ripple effect that will
Oh
come out
wow.
of this show. And I think maybe this is going to, oddly enough, open the door for us to go to the Old Republic era officially.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, so they've been cut off and we can't tell if it's been cut off from like during the Clone Wars or before that or whatever. And I was thinking, okay, they don't know about the Empire, they don't know about the New Republic because this is supposed to be basically in the same era as the Mandoverse. And the thing that I was thinking about was so their planet is been hidden behind this veil for long enough that it's become legend. And in Star Wars, histories are kept so much better than what we have in the real world now because the technology is so advanced. So, you know, we look back, like if you've ever gone to any of the ancient pyramids in not just Egypt, but just barely south of us in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I live in Texas, so I'm like right there. You go just, you know, a few hours further south and you can see these ancient ruins of these pyramids that, you know, the ancient Maya built and things. And it's like they were here and then we don't know what happened.
Yeah.
And that was just a couple of hundred years ago in the grand scheme of things. So, and our technology obviously has advanced time and time again. If Star Wars technology has been as advanced as it's been for hundreds, if not thousands of years, there would be a record that would have been kept if it was in recent memory. And then I was also, to your point, I was thinking, okay, here's, you know, mom and dad are going out of town. Here's $50 for the week for your lunch or whatever. And then I was thinking, okay, no big deal. Maybe it's just because they haven't seen Republic credits. And then I was thinking to myself, well, the Empire was only around for 20 years. So the Mandalorian is like, you know, 30 years removed from Republic credits being accepted everywhere. So if you go into a bar on Coruscant, you know, they want New Republic credits because that's what's going on right now. They might accept Imperial credits, your old Republic credits, quote unquote, your Republic credits from when the Clone Wars were happening, probably harder to pawn, but if you had enough of it, they would use it. It's not what's the word I'm looking for? And it's not antiquated enough to have gained value. It's not a dollar bill from 100 years ago. That's a dollar bill.
Outdated.
It's just outdated. It's just an older version. It's just the iPhone 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really cool. But if you had an original first Mac, you know, first Apple PC, and it was like as if it was brand new, you could sell that for something. So I agree with you 100%. I think that they've been out of this time that we're used to for, I mean, I want to say hundreds, if not thousands of years because of how little they know about the universe. Wim reads about the Jedi and they're kind of like a thought that's out there, but they're not something that doesn't exist. Like once you get into the Imperial Age, the Jedi not only don't exist anymore, but they're frowned upon. Like Leia and Luke and them are trying to gain the respect of people as Jedi. And so I think they're thousands of years back there somewhere. And I'm very interested, like you said, is the treasure just the world that they've been hiding. Not even necessarily the gold. Of course, there's money and whatnot, but is it the knowledge of the Jedi from years past? Is it different? Maybe they have just different understandings of how the world works, or there are who knows.
That'd be
What do you
wild.
think? Halfway through the season, we kind of end on a cliffhanger where SM-33, his old memories and orders are starting to pick up, and he was about to kill all these kids, and luckily Jod hits the kill switch. And it was so weird because episode 4 started really fast, was kind of slow, obviously working on the character building of Neil. Not slow like I was bored, but it was just a slower pace. And then towards the end it picks way up, and it's like, hey, this is one of freaking like, they just start reading these pillars in the sanctum, and it's like you have at Akron, you have at this, at that, all these like 5 different places, and then at Aten, the coordinates were cut off. So clearly, we're probably going to have to go to one of these other places, hoping that planet, similar to how at Aten and at Akron, were basically like clones of each other. Like the school was the same. Hey, and the kids knew this is what the school looks like in our world. Oh, this is where my mom works. So this is where the overseer works and things like that.
Even like that rundown house they were in was the exact same layout as Fern's house.
Or Fern's house. And she's like, yeah, the tree's too big for this.
The stairwell, like it was all exactly the same. So it makes me wonder, like with all these other worlds, the jewels of the Old Republic, there's this weird like 1984, like Big Brother's watching you kind of like very cult vibe going on about, okay, why are these worlds, if at Akron and at Aten are basically clones, like twins, like of each other, it's safe to assume that the rest of the 9 were the same.
Yeah.
Like, why? Why were these worlds made as exact replicas of each other? Why were they identical? What's the deal with like all the like on Aten, all the jobs that everyone has? It's all data, and like the kids are starting to catch on this too. It's like my parents are analysts. Oh, and my parents are analysts too. What are we analyzing?
Yeah.
What numbers are we crunching? Why are we only learning math?
And we have endless supply of jobs just for data. It's
just
like
for data.
You take the SAT, I take the SAT, you ace it, I flunk it. We're both working in data. Like it's very interesting. And there's enough information that they're sorting, whether it's crunching numbers of what they own, whether it's data that they're cycling through from thousands of years of backlogs of history in the galaxy as they know it. Whatever it is, everybody, okay, obviously it's a smaller community, but hey, here's a class of 50 kids that's going to graduate. And guess what? We have jobs for all of them in data. And if you notice, it's like every, not just human, but every sentient person has a job in that structure because they have droids to cut the grass. They have droids to be the security. They have droids to run the schools. They have droids to do this. They have droids to do that. And it's everything's so pre-programmed. I was thinking about this in the very Truman Show type of way, which I think they're kind of pulling a little bit from, who all is in on the joke. In the Truman Show, everybody's in on it but Truman. You know what I mean? And maybe it's not like everybody but Wim knows, but there's somebody there in the upper infrastructure, just like every government ever. Somebody knows what's going on. Blast Point's made the point. Did the previous captain crash a couple 100 years ago or 25 years ago or however long ago? And now they're the overseer that lives in the tower. And they're the one that's running everything. Really crazy thought. But, moving forward, kind of speculating a little bit, I have no idea, like, this could end up being such a bigger story. Like you said, a ripple effect. When the Skeleton Crew got announced, I was like, I don't know how far we can go with this. And now it's like, this might be the most impactful series they've made so far.
Right.
Which, let me get your thoughts on this. This is, okay, we wouldn't be the Chiss Ascendancy if we weren't reaching. And I know we're right past that 30-minute mark, so we won't be here forever. But it took me back, right? Because I'm always reaching for, and I've been right sometimes and I've been wrong sometimes. And that's okay. I miss 100% of the shots I don't take. What it got me thinking about, a lost society in the future after the original trilogy was a lost tribe of the Sith. And do I think that the people that live on Aten are all Sith? No. What I'm saying is they have something that the world either needs and doesn't know it, or something that it doesn't need and people knew that it was dangerous to have, whether they hoarded it to themselves because it's so interesting, or they were maybe it's the opposite of what they think, and it's not that the shield's protecting them. Maybe the shield is protecting the rest of the galaxy from whatever information or power or whatever they might have. And maybe this isn't the lost tribe of the Sith. Of course, I don't think freaking Neil's dad is a Sith Lord, but I'm saying the concept of a planet seemingly existing right underneath everyone's nose, but not existing, right? Similar to like what Camino was like in episode 2. Well, it should be here, but it's not.
Yeah.
Where are these planets? And does this open up the door for future antagonists of our heroes, not just in this series, but down the road for larger Star Wars projects where the Sith in the Fate of the Jedi series that end up coming to help Luke Skywalker fight Abeloth, who is that the main antagonist of Ahsoka season 2?
Likely.
So maybe they're not conjoined. Maybe I'm just like spitballing here. Obviously, I would be the Rian Johnson of a Star Wars movie. I would write it exactly how I want it, and people would be like, either they loved it or they hated it. But my brain goes to there because it's like, okay, are they protecting themselves from the galaxy? Or did someone in power thousands of years ago decide to protect the galaxy from these people and they don't even know it yet?
Yeah. See, I've seen some theories floating around, which I'm not 100% against if they can do it well. Like the idea that somehow, some way, AT-ATN is connected to helping to build the First Order, or somehow connected to helping build in secret the Sith Eternal Fleet. All those resources aren't on Exegol. All of those people aren't on Exegol. Like, they got to come from somewhere. Building a Star Destroyer fleet takes money, you know? Maybe even an entire world's worth of lost treasure. I would love for this story to evolve to where we find out that not only is this like really creepy and like cultish, but it's like sinister. Something like deeply disturbing and sinister is going on. And about like what you said about who's in on it. Obviously the parents aren't. They're just as confused. Even Fern's mom, who's like a high-ranking government official, is like,
she's like, they'll find them.
You
we
can't
were always found.
Go find our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and if you caught it, the security droid said that the supervisor said that they can't risk contact. What's the risk in contact? Why are we not wanting to be discovered? Apparently, we're all a part of the Republic, right? Mm-hmm. We're all a part of this great work, what's that? What's the great work?
Yeah. What's great work, that term is such a cult term.
It really is.
You know what I mean? Like, you would have these cults back in the day, and it's like, this cult was known as the Family. And you're like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy because, like, or like, coming from a religious background, one of the things that David Koresh kind of held over his people in Waco was, hey, I need as much resources as I can have, and I need peace, and I need everything the way I need it. I need the government not involved, because in the book of Revelation, there are 7 seals that the chosen one, the Messiah, is going to open, and I'm going to open those for you, but I need you to do this work for me so that I can focus and become who I'm supposed to be and embrace my destiny and all this other stuff. And so there's all, like with any cult, and we could be way off, but that's the fun of speculation.
Yeah.
This could be our Snoke moment and we're completely wrong. But the any cult or any group that just is blindly followed, there are beautiful, sweet, amazing, loving people at the base pushing forward, sometimes not even to their knowledge, a really terrible, sinister concept for someone else to stay in power.
Yes.
And is it something sinister that could turn into something massive galaxy wide? You know, who knows? Or it could be just, a big fish wanting to stay in control of a small pond and not wanting any other fish to get through the barrier, So we've got a lot that could happen. I'm very excited. I always look forward to it. I haven't disliked any of the episodes, but we've got a lot to go. So we're going to wrap it up here, but I just wanted to say, dude, thank you for coming on. Looking forward to chatting with you and Joel about what's to come, and the sky's the limit. This could go freaking anywhere. And so thank you so much, Finn, for tuning in. For those of you who are watching, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Follow the Chiss Ascendancy podcast. We've got Instagram. We've got TikTok. Obviously, we're on YouTube. Follow us. We're getting back in the groove of things, trying to make content for you guys. And Finn's a huge part of coming on tonight and kind of last minute and helping me out getting this. But I wanted to get thoughts out there before episode 5 because we're sprinting towards the end of this season already. So Finn, thank you so much. Any last words before I let you run? Where can people find you on Instagram and all that good stuff?
Oh man, yeah. People can find me on Instagram at FindorMoon. I have a YouTube channel as well, but I don't really do much with that. If you want a good laugh, a good chuckle, go check out my YouTube channel. Yeah. Also, you'll often find me in comments and things over at SWTVC.
Yes,
that's like a second home for me as far as Instagram goes. That community hub right there. But yeah. I'm super excited to see what happens. I've got so many theories about these kids, about Jod. Is he a Jedi or not?
All that we could go another 30 minutes talking about that.
Dude, that's a whole other episode, like podcast episode right there. Who is Jod? What's his deal? But yeah, I'm super excited with a new episode dropping tomorrow night. I'm sure that I'm going to have even more thoughts. So yeah, can't wait to come back on here and discuss
lighting the chat up. And hopefully in another couple of weeks, maybe we can find a time for you and Joel to both be on and we can just cut it up and do all kinds of stuff like that. So thank you guys for tuning in. Again, this has been episode 103 of the Chiss Ascendancy podcast. Go and follow Finn at FindorMoon on Instagram. He does awesome photography and great custom work. And we will be talking to you soon. Remember, the Force will be with you always. See ya.
See ya.